This evening, hundreds of Jewish women in Melbourne are gathering at a vigil in Elston Week to stand in solidarity with Israeli women and children who were raped, slaughtered and kidnapped during the October 7 Hamas terror attacks. They have protested the silence of women and human rights organisations, particularly at the United Nations, who failed to condemn or even acknowledge the sexual violence perpetrated against Israeli women and children. Join me now from the vigil, Shadow Education Minister, Senator for Victoria, Sarah Henderson. I'll get to the UN and others in a moment if I can, Sarah, but we know many of these women in Israel were horrifically raped, and I'm mindful of the time. I can't discuss much of this on air, but horrifically raped. Those rapes were seen by eyewitnesses who survived the attacks, and then they were basically executed at point-blank range. This is something we cannot stay silent about, is it?
Well, Peter, good evening and great to join you, and absolutely not. And that was the message of tonight's vigil. Hundreds of Jewish women and some men were here to say we cannot stay silent. We have a duty to speak out, and I was very honoured to join a number of very prominent women, and also Kylie Moore-Gilbert, of course, who's an incredible woman in herself, who was held hostage in Iran for nearly 3 years, speaking out about the horrific and abhorrent acts against Jewish and Israeli women. And it was a very, very powerful vigil tonight, Pet, I have to say.
I'm looking at some of the signs there, Sarah, and there's a woman holding a sign that says, "Me too, unless you're a Jew."
Well, that's right. And I say, where are all the women's groups? Where are the human rights groups? It took the United Nations Women's Organisation 57 days to even acknowledge these atrocities. And there was a young woman who spoke tonight, and her very close childhood friend was one of the young soldiers who was brutally raped and is now a hostage and hopefully still alive. And hearing her words was just soul-destroying. Also, Peter, the Jewish community here in Melbourne and in all parts of Australia are devastated by the horrendous level of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel hatred in this country. I mean, I had a woman, I was just speaking to her before, she was in tears. She can't even tell her co-workers that she's Jewish. There is so much fear, and so there were so many brave women standing up and saying we have to speak out. There are no excuses. We cannot qualify this in any way. We have to let the world know what happened to Israeli and Jewish women on that terrible day. And of course, in my speech, I also acknowledged the atrocities against Palestinian women by Hamas as well. Let's not beat around the bush. Hamas is an evil terrorist organisation, a pure evil, and I'm just so proud to be part of the vigil tonight.
What pressure can be put on by the Australian government, the Albanese government, to really hold the UN to account? Because we've seen the UN speak out on sexual harassment really, really strongly. But we're talking about the rape of women, then point-blank execution. We're talking about the defiling of corpses, for God's sake, Sarah.
Look, where are they? And I think this is why Jewish women have stood up and said, your silence is not acceptable. There are no excuses. And the members of the United Nations Women's Group have a responsibility to speak out for all women. Why are they differentiating? And where are all those women's groups, the Me Too movement? Where are they, Peter?